People can hear me okay? All right. I'm also naturally pretty loud, so if I start clipping and I'm too loud, wave me down and I'll back it off. Hey everybody, I'm Chris DeLeon of Home Team Game Dev. I want to talk today about online learning that works better for students and teachers. It's been about my background, making games since 1997, professionally since 2005, zigzagged between AAA, indie, R&D, and academia. Established perpetual game development practice communities every several years for the past 20 years. Handed off the first two 10 years ago. All 5 still operate. We've released more than 500 games across the lot of them. Been making my living this way the past 8 years. First 2 groups I ran for free in colleges. Online learning got a terrible rap during COVID. Understandably, it tried to model what works in a classroom. That's not what works online. People were seeking in-person, so of course they're frustrated. That's not what they signed up for. Plus, everyone's stressed. There was a pandemic. But I've been teaching fully online since 2016 and found a format that worked better for teachers and students alike. Now, I love teaching, but I've had a lot of frustrations when I try to find a great teaching role. I find I'm teaching what someone else tells me to teach, how they tell me to teach it. Often it's the way that I'm the best suited person to teach or to approach. I'm often stuck teaching people who don't care that much about it. Their parents wanted them to do it, they weren't enthused, and I'm told where I have to live. Now, I don't blame the teachers, the students, anything. It's a systematic challenge of the existing structures. Our favorite classroom in graduate school, though, worked in a very different way than most classes. We basically showed up and the teacher said, okay, everybody, your Unity game is due at the end of October. If you have questions, I'm here. You have technology, learn how to do stuff online. And that was our favorite. That was the favorite people to talk to at USC, people at Digipin, whether it's their capstone, whether it's their finishing pieces project, whatever. Now the skills for teaching, if the students can teach themselves online, are different than a classroom lecture. Instead, you need to be able to help people when they get stuck. And that gives them confidence to try stuff. It's like having a gem spotter. You'll try more because you know you're not going to get in a dead end. And to talk out plans with someone who knows about the person and cares about them. It's still teaching, it's still work, but it's a different format, and it scales very differently. Otherwise, they mostly need us out of their way. We don't want to be having them dependent on us. We don't be having them needing us kind of walking through every single thing. That doesn't last the rest of their life. I figured I can take that same format, do it with lower overhead, less bureaucratic stuff in the middle, and it's worked out pretty well for our people. We've got people who've been finally able to make the game that they want to make. We've got people who have been in the game industry for 10 years and still find this is how they're learning and doing the fun stuff on the side that they miss. We've also got people who it helps them in interviews that have this practical, team, hands-on, dynamic stuff. It's different than academic learning. There's nothing wrong with academic learning, but it's a different type of learning that goes on in these environments. And for certain types of skills, it's a good fit. 3 major sections I want to talk about. 4 core features surrounding this, how it's unlike other things you're familiar with, and some tips to start your own. Core features, sustainable remote practice and community, to me, are the 4 ingredients. We'll talk about these one at a time. Sustainable, I've volunteered a lot. I've organized about 85 speakers at just volunteer level. Chaired IG Los Angeles in 2020. It was a tough year to do it. But I saw it burn out a lot of good people who want to help. They want to give. That's why they're doing these things, and it burns them out of it. And in the long run, means you have fewer people who are out there helping others because they can't sustain it. And again, there's nothing wrong with organizing, nothing wrong with any of that stuff. I am been on both sides of that. But I was putting in a kind of work I couldn't sustain unless I made it my job. So part of sustainability is figuring out how to do this as a business, just as much as you might do freelance tutoring or something else, so you can reinvest views to provide shared benefits for members in far excess to what they could get out of a free group that didn't have a budget to do stuff for them, connecting them to trainers, material support, whatever you can do with that. Now, among the benefits you have to budget for is you giving your attention sustainably to it. Otherwise, again, you burn out, and it was a nice thing while you could sustain it, but you couldn't keep doing it, which ultimately doesn't serve their interests. Just like when you're running your independent game studios, it does wind up being a real business, so obviously taxes, entity, legal help, contracts, yada yada, y'all get the sense, but basically to sustain it, it's got to be done correctly. Core feature 2, why do I care about remote? Not everyone lives in big cities. I'm so grateful to live in Boston. I was grateful to live in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Pittsburgh and Atlanta. We have these awesome meetups and these often local people. I grew up in St. Joseph, Missouri. I knew no one else who wanted to make video games in the year 2000 in St. Joseph, Missouri. If they were, I couldn't find them. People are lonely because we can't find people who share our deep interests. And again, in big cities, we have the fortune to do that. A lot of people who are a few hours outside of town have a much harder time finding the kind of community we enjoy here. And it helps fit into people's lives, which obviously everybody's lives count as busy. And I want more people to thrive in their deep interests without conflicting with their other life needs. Practice. So to me, it's got to be about learning and growth. The only grade that they need, this part also reduces the burden on the teacher, is they have an authentic audience. They're doing something because they want to be good at it. They want their game to come out nicely. They want their art to look good. They want to show in their portfolio, to show their friends, their family. I can still give them supportive feedback and corrective feedback, but they're not trying to impress me for 85 to 90%. That's not a part of how this work has to happen. It's not part of that system. It's also okay if someone just wants to enjoy it for practice. Like you might want to practice basketball but have no care to go to the NBA, at this level where it's fitting around the rest of their life, they can just do art because they want to do art. They don't have to be good at art. They don't have to care to get better at it. They can do programming because it's fun to program. Now, for us, Art of Practice has been doing free projects, and not everyone sees it this way. To me, that's been a big element for it. Keeps the pressure low so teammates don't get mad at each other for you're going to tank our sales. Lets people try new things. They can put the first Blender model, the first song, the first code into a project. Avoids misusing the system as sort of like free labor for someone else's sellable project, and it reduces legal overhead. By default, everyone keeps their respective stuff. For community, peers are the point. Whether it's a job, whether it's a college, whether it is living in a big city that we pay a premium for, it's access to people. And so here are the gold pins are where we've had projects led from, the blue pins are people contributed to. In many places, they didn't know someone else locally that they could do this with. I'm a strong believer that we form better bonds when we help each other out. When I have your back, when you got stuck and I helped you, when you need a thing done, I helped provide it. I know these people better than I know the neighbors on either side of me in my apartment complex. But those pins aren't all at the same time, and members are split into 3 groups. It's all the same processes, it's all the same materials, but different peers and projects. And the reason why we do that is because it has to be human scale. You can't have 200 and 2,000 people who get to know each other. It's really hard to be the 100th person in a group. 35 to 70 is what we found, where when it gets past that point, you walk into a group of 75 people, you're in a sea of faces, they don't even notice if you leave. In a smaller group, you can see a whole your size and say, okay, they need a Blender model. They need someone who's going to be a little better at this way of using C#. And the nice thing about this number 2 is when you grow it up to about 70, you split it, you butt it off into another and keep going. Another reason community helps is it allows lower fee per student than one-on-one. I taught one-on-one for many years, like guitar lessons once a week online through Skype or whatever, and to charge more per hour than when it's a distributed cost among the community. Also allows more dynamic learning. They can be doing more things that I could coach them through one-on-one. Peer discussion, which they learn a lot through, than they would from just talking to me as sort of the authority on what they're trying to learn. And it lessens dependence on me. Some people have worked with one-on-one, they have a hard time working after I'm no longer there every single hour they're working here. They try it first on their own, they come to me when they need help. We've spent years trying to untangle, explaining how it's unlike other things. People saying, oh, is it like a game jam? Is it like a boot camp? It's like mentor matching or video courses? And no, it has some benefits of all those things, but here I'm trying to get some answers to how it's not like those. And I could easily spend hours talking about this. I put a ton of it on hometeamgamedev.com. That's my example of this stuff. On the process page, if you don't memorize that URL. But you got a whole menu of how it's like and unlike these different things. Part of the challenge is overcoming, we get pigeonholed into like, oh, I assume it's like a university but. And it's kind of not. It's sort of its own thing. That's why I'm out here trying to evangelize for I want more people doing this kind of stuff. So some tips to start your own. Basically, you got to build a lighthouse. You have to make yourself findable. So picture who your ideal students are. They could be anywhere in the world, and you have to make it so that they know you're doing what they're looking for. Right? It's on you to light that beacon, raise the flag, whatever metaphor you want, shoot the signal flare. And the way I found that's worked well for me for this, we've got YouTube videos with 10 million views, we've got video courses of 370,000 students. Figure out what would you cover that every person, you want to explain to them before you work on their personal custom issues. Whatever technical approach, whatever conceptual approach, and then give that away, or make it low cost at scale, but get that in people's hands. Give them a way to try out your approach, figure out if they vibe with your energy, your attitude about it. It also helps filter out people who would just be a bad fit. It doesn't mean they're bad people, it means they should look elsewhere for where it's going to match with them. And what's great is this also acts as a filter then for which people have alignment. And yeah, we're all in Unreal or Pygame or whatever approach makes sense to them. So then as part of this, you point out a free email list. You say, hey, if you're interested in people who also work this way, sign up over here. It might take 6 months, might take 1 month, might take 5 years, but you can accumulate up people to then, once you reach critical mass, reach out to them and say, hey everybody, we're starting a group of people who are doing stuff this way. And it keeps kind of feeding itself that way. The best students for me anywhere in the world find me. I have no faculty meetings, I have no grading, I have no repeating lectures. Students and I both have more flexibility in our time and approach. I serve a lot more people than I did teaching in university at Georgia Tech. And it was a lot of work to set up, but I'm living my dream, and I want more teachers and community organizers to do it, but there's more than I can cover in a 10-minute talk. By the way, this also applies to more than games. I'm currently trying to help people set this up for comics creation, digital music, writing workshops, language learning, shared academic interests, a version of our group in a different culture and language. Part I'm also trying to do is realize if it's a project-based thing, if it's something you can learn on your own a little bit online, we can still build communities that support each other. So my timeline is here today in Boston. I'm opening up an application to help people literally for free until the end of the year, trying to help you start this stuff from anything I can advise, share with you, teach you how to do. January, kicking off some of these groups to help advise. Start of summer, developing at scale whatever we learn from the groups we kick off by January. And then a year from now, trying to launch a coalition of organizations like this to trade notes. I'm lonely. I want to find someone else who's doing this kind of thing to say, how'd you solve this problem? How are you approaching this angle? And perhaps we even have a chance to figure out that, you know, my student would love to work on poetry. I hear you run the group for that. Or my student would like to do a C++ SDL game. I don't do that. Let me send them your way. But anyway, join the movement. I'm looking for people who are serious about this, and I will truly help you for free until the end of the year. BraveLighthouse.com has a little link. Just redesign the website here. And you can get my help starting an online learning community by the end of the year, is the hope. That's it for me. Thanks, everybody.